Hi everybody, welcome to chapter 7. Sean, we just saw that in the previous chapter God gave Gideon all the signs that he will be with him, that they're about to go into battle, but now we're going to see that he really sets him up against the odds, and that's where a selection process takes place. If you can just tell us a little bit more when we get to this place.
Here we are at the spring of Harod on the southern side of the valley of Jezreel, Israel. In back of me is the valley. Here you see the pool near the spring, and this is where a very interesting part of the Gideon story takes place.
This is actually where God really sets him up against the odds. We've just seen that the enemy, Ein Mispar, they are innumerous. And now God brings them here, and firstly he says 22,000 soldiers are way too many. And then he says those who don't want to be here, those who are weak of spirit should go. And we see 12,000 leave, 10,000 remain. At that point God then says, but it's still not enough, I would like you to bring their numbers down. So he brings them to the spring and he says to Gideon, let them drink the water. Those who lap like dogs, I want you to separate them, and the others that bend down on the knee, put them on the other side. At the end, those who drank the water, they call them the lappers, those were 300 people. And God said, take these 300 and with those you will go into battle. Why did this happen? Why the selection process?
The whole purpose of the selection process is to emphasize to Gideon and to the readers that it is not Gideon's victory, it is God's victory. God wants to show that the victory can be achieved by a small force. There is an interesting midrashic explanation of the lappers, that those who did not bend down were those who didn't bow down to Baal. Those who lapped didn't bend down to Baal, and therefore they were chosen to represent the victory, a small number of people, showing that the victory clearly comes from God.
Sean, tell us a little bit more about the battle.
The emphasis in the battle is that this is a battle that's unlike most of the battles in Judges. The point is to show that this is God winning the battle, not Gideon, not the soldiers. In some ways it's very much like the battle that Joshua fights at Jericho, and the instruments he uses are similar.
We see an interesting choice of weaponry. We see a shofar, an empty jar, and a torch. Why this selection?
The choice of weaponry in some ways recalls to us the story of Jericho in Joshua chapter 6. There in Joshua chapter 6, he uses the shofarot as he goes around the city. And here too, the shofarot are designed, the shofars are designed to call attention to the idea that it's God's victory. The shofarot blast, the jars are broken, and the Midianites become terrified at the noise, and they begin to escape. And it's that escape and that terror that wins the victory. It's not the force of arms, it's not Gideon's numbers, because he only has 300 men. Rather, it's the noise of the shofarot and the noise of the breaking jars that calls to mind God's victory here. The noise that God's army makes causes the enemy to flee.
We see another pattern where at this stage the enemy turns against themselves, and we see this in many battles when God fights for Israel.
Yes, at the moment where the soldiers of Gideon say a sword to God and to Gideon, indicating that their main leader is God, also Gideon, but their main leader is God, then the enemy becomes discomfited, they go into a panic, and they begin to flee. And they flee in the direction of the Jordan River, fleeing from here towards Beit Hashita, from there towards the Jordan River, towards Abel Mecholah. And then, of course, we move into chapter 8.